young college student from an educated Brahmin family in Pune suddenly gives up college, leaves her home, and begins to live with a Telugu grocer as his mistress. If you heard this news, how would you feel? Your very first reaction would probably be that this is not a very good news. This is a reflex reaction as a result of social rules and regulations considered acceptable by past several generations. That is because in the said incident, the young lady has slashed several social norms. Her act is not limited to the rebellious behavior of choosing the man for conjugal relations. She has not only broken the fetters of caste, region, social status, and educational status, but she has also given up the shackles of the institution of marriage. Naturally, this is an act that would shake up the social sensibilities for sure. This is the beginning of the novel Brahmankanya by Dr. Shreedhar Vyankatesh Ketkar, a writer of extraordinary intelligence. This novel, published in 1930 and the fifth written by Ketkar, is the topic of discussion in the 25th episode of Granthyatra today. Ketkar attained a PhD from the Cornell University in the United States in the year 1911 on the topic of the history of caste in India. His research paper on this topic was acclaimed by scholars in the West. On his return to India, Ketkar spent 12 years in compiling the gigantic 23 volumes of encyclopedia in Marathi. In addition, he wrote 7 novels and several research articles on sociology and history. He is well known as a thinker who devoted his life to social reforms. It is this aspect of his personality that is reflected in Brahmankanya, the novel considered to be his best. The thoughts expounded in this novel are so revolutionary that a comparatively less enlightened reader may be shocked even today. One can only imagine what kind of a storm the narrative may have created 90 years ago when it was published. The novel begins with the news that Kalindi, the daughter of Advocate Appasaheb Dagge, has left home and begun to live with the grocer Shivsharanappa as his mistress. As the reasoning behind her act unfolds gradually, the reader's preconceived notions are jolted one after the other. And one begins to be surprised by our mind's adherence to established norms, the same adherence which had led it to declare Kalindi's act as deplorable by reflex action. Kalindi's father Appasaheb Dagge has a reformist attitude, but he lacks the courage to fight the society's resistance to reforms. His efforts to abolish the caste system are limited to his personal life. He had married the educated daughter of an unwed mother named Manjula. However, instead of his wife Shantabai being welcomed into the Brahmin class as he had expected, his act led to ostracization of his family by the Brahmins. His children would have no choice but to marry into castes other than Brahmins. Appasaheb's children, of course, don't care much for the caste system. Under these circumstances, the value of a marriage is to only ensure economic support for their progeny. However, Kalindi is against any association with a man only for the sake of securing her child's financial status. She would rather have such association based on love, in which case she does not consider the bonds of a formal wedding necessary. She does not want anyone to believe that she married Shivsharanappa for his money. What has led to the creation of the institution of marriage, religion or economy? Ketkar strongly postulates this modern evolutionary debate in this novel. Marriage is a kind of insurance, he says. When a man and a woman come together, the woman gives birth to children and her capacity to create wealth decreases, which is why the institution of marriage places the responsibility of providing for the woman and children on the man. For a man to be able to carry out this responsibility, he should have a sense of belonging. That is the reason for the need for obedience on the part of the woman. On this background, Ketkar raises the question of whether it is appropriate to subject a woman to the rules of a patriarchal family where the man is incapable of earning a livelihood or where the woman earns more than the man. He advocates that the society should also accept the principle of matriarchal families, and every individual should have the freedom to choose either of these systems for his or her family. In fact, he has created a character in this novel who has resolved to create a social system based on these new principles and who has created a set of laws for this proposed society. This is the character of Vaishnath Shastri, who is a learned and outspoken thinker. He is trying to compile his thoughts in a scripture called Vaishnath Smriti, and Kalindi's father Appasaheb and brother Satyavrat help him in this task. Appasaheb, who is not even ready to acknowledge his daughter at the beginning of the novel, gets transformed to the extent of being open to the idea of a matriarchal family towards the end of the novel. Even the mind of the reader is gradually transformed as she or he reads about Kalindi's story of life after her departure from her parents' home. After Kalindi gives birth to Shivasharanappa's son, the merchant grocer faces loss in his business. As a result, he begins to neglect Kalindi. The young mother is heartbroken at the thought that Shivasharanappa no longer needs her, and she contemplates suicide. Her friend Esther, who belongs to the Bene Israel community, provides her emotional support and gives her shelter in her home. Through Esther's lively personality and her practical attitude towards life, Ketkar is able to comment on several contemporary issues. When Kalindi asks Esther whether she has any experience of love, Esther replies, "When a girl reaches the age of 15 or 16, it is natural for the emotion of love to arise in her mind. It is also natural for someone close by to be the object of that love. How is it possible for us to love the men whom our parents or the rest of the world thinks as appropriate for us? Because those men are somewhere out there, and instead several other young men are around us. So isn't it natural for us to notice those who are around us? And when love arises in the heart, it will get bestowed on those persons who are close by, even if it is to be forgotten later on. Basically, what is the relation between love and marriage?" The same principle is later used by a Gujarati girl, Karun Sundari, on a young man called Ram Rao. As a result of the feelings natural for her young age, and because of their close proximity, she falls in love with Ram Rao. They even begin a physical relationship. Yet, she refuses to marry him because she has been engaged to another man after accepting ornaments worth 20,000 rupees from him. She lends her father some money for his business out of the interest she earns on those ornaments. Through this example too, Ketkar reiterates that marriage is more of an economic pact than an emotional engagement. Ketkar believes that the laws governing a family, which is itself based on the economic pact in the nature of marriage, should change on the basis of the ability of its members to create wealth. Where the woman is more capable of generating wealth, she should be allowed more freedom. Going even further, Ketkar advocates that the woman should also have the right to motherhood outside wedlock. He believes that the society should not deny this right to those women who are capable of earning a living and providing for their children, or to those who have not been able to find a man who is willing to enter into matrimony with them, or even to widows who yearn for a child. As part of the Vaishnath Smriti, he even suggests that such women should come together and create a fund to support themselves. In the words of Vaishnath Shastri, the religious laws governing the association of men and women in the world today, or the moral values, are very backward. New laws are needed in this matter. I am giving my opinion in the paragraph before the basic laws are delineated by the seers. He then goes on to mention these laws. Those women who are running their own business should not be straddled with the responsibility of obeying the commands of their husbands or being subjugated by the husbands. 2. The society needs both patriarchal and matriarchal family structure. 3. we don't deny women the right to give birth to their loved children. This is the way in which Ketkar's writing makes the reader think about his or her own life. It propagates new thoughts from a novel perspective. This is a modern sculpture with powerful strokes of social thought. That's how Nilkant Mahadev Ketkar describes Ketkar's writing. Ketkar was the first writer in Marathi to analyze familial feelings from a social point of view. In the novel Brahmankanya, Kalindi believes that her parents forgot her not just because of her objectionable behavior, but because of her poverty. Similarly, she blames her father for marrying out of his caste. Sacrifice actually means sacrificing the happiness of your wife and children, because the person who makes the sacrifice enjoys praise in return, but his wife and children have to face the consequences of that sacrifice, she says, giving a voice to her own experience. Ketkar has compassion for every person or the class of persons who is oppressed by the society. Through the examples of Shivsharanappa, Karuna Sundari, and the mill workers in Mumbai, he points out that economic inequality is the reason for the helplessness of an individual or a class of people. He visualizes a future where every person in the world is happy and all the people of the world are united, and believes that this would only be possible when youth like Ram Rao would take on the task of removing this inequality as the goal of their life, and when social rules proposed by Vaishnath Smriti would be accepted by all. Let us hear more from Dr. Sumangala Bakre about Ketkar's style of writing.
श्रीधर व्यंकटेश केतकर यांची लेखनशैली अतिशय अभिनव अशी आहे. कालिंदीच्या गृहत्यागाची धक्कादायक बातमी सांगून ब्राह्मणकन्या या कादंबरीची ते नाट्यमय सुरुवात करतात आणि त्यामुळेच वाचकांची जिज्ञासा तीव्रतेने जागृत होते आणि तिथून पुढे एक सुसंगत प्रमेय प्रणाली सुरू होते. जाती संथा मोडण्यासाठी केलेल्या वैयक्तिक प्रयत्नांची निष्फलता, पुढच्या पिढीचा त्यामुळे उद्भवणारा रोष व त्यांनी केलेल्या रूढीचे उन्मूलन, जाती व्यवस्था, विवाह संस्था यांच्या मुळाशी असणारा अर्थविचार आणि त्यातून उद्भवणाऱ्या नियमांच्या मर्यादा त्या ओळखून बदलत्या कालानुसार आवश्यक असलेल्या नव्या मूल्यावर आधारित समाज स्थापना हे सूत्र केतकर कथानकातून अतिशय प्रभावीपणे उलगडत नेतात. नायक नायिकेचा परिचय, त्यांच्यात प्रेमभावना उत्पन्न होणे, त्यांच्या लग्नाला विरोध किंवा खलनायकामुळे गैरसमज आणि शेवटी सर्व विघ्ने दूर होऊन सुखांत शेवट, असे त्या काळी प्रचलित असलेले रंजक कादंबरी लेखनाचे सर्व नियम झुगारून देऊन जगातल्या श्रेष्ठ कथा वाङ्मय लेखनाच्या पातळीवरून केतकर लिहितात. टीकाकारांनी ब्राह्मणकन्या या कादंबरीची तुलना जी.बी. शॉ यांच्या नाटकाशी केली आहे. भावभावनांच्या चित्रणापेक्षा बुद्धिनिष्ठ आणि तर्कशुद्ध भूमिका घेऊन केतकरांनी ही कादंबरी लिहिली आहे. जीवनातील भावनिक हेलकाव्यांचे वर्णन करताना देखील कुठेही अतिरेकी भावविवशता न आणता प्रभावी वर्णन करण्याचे कौशल्य केतकरांच्या लेखणीत आहे. भावनांचे कल्लोळ, योगायोग किंवा अपघात वजा प्रसंग याऐवजी चिरपरिणामकारक घटना, शास्त्रीय विश्लेषण आणि तर्कनिष्ठ नाट्य या तंत्राचा कादंबरीच्या लेखनात केतकरांनी उपयोग केलेला आहे. ललित वाङ्मयातील रूढ संकेत आणि सुसंगत कथासूत्र वाचण्याची सवय झालेल्या वाचकांना जरी ही कादंबरी रंजक वाटली नाही तरी प्रभावी विचार प्रवाह आणि अभिनव कल्पना समजणाऱ्या प्रगल्भ वाचकांना ही कादंबरी नक्कीच भुरळ घालते. मराठी कादंबरीचा इतिहास पाहिला तर हरिभाऊ आपटेंनी आपल्या कादंबरीतून वर्णन केलेली स्त्री ही स्त्री शिक्षणाच्या प्रसाराच्या सुरुवातीच्या काळातली स्त्री आहे. वामनराव जोशी यांच्या कादंबरीतली स्त्री ही स्वायत्त, धनार्जना समर्थ अशी स्त्री आहे. केतकरांच्या कादंबरीतली स्त्री ही पुरुषांशी केवळ बरोबरी करणारी नव्हे, तर समाज संघटनेची जोखीम वाहणारी जबाबदारी व्यक्ती आहे. समाजात तिला प्रतिष्ठित स्थान आहे. त्यामुळे त्यांनी कल्पलेली स्त्री सत्ताक कुटुंब पद्धती या सामाजिक उत्क्रांतीतील स्वाभाविकच पुढची पायरी ठरते. अशा रीतीने या कादंबरीतून वाचकांची केवळ सामाजिक जाणीवच नव्हे, तर साहित्यिक अभिरुची देखील केतकर प्रगल्भ करतात. या पुस्तकाच्या प्रत्येक वाचनाने त्यांच्या लेखनाचे रहस्य वाचकाला अधिकाधिक समजत जाईल असा आत्मविश्वास ते कादंबरीच्या सुरुवातीपासूनच व्यक्त करतात.
Another important aspect of the novel Brahmankanya is the fact that it has no villains. This novel does not have characters that are either completely good or are totally bad. Ketkar provides a logical explanation for the motives and actions of every character in this novel. Circumstances are mostly responsible for the inappropriate actions of individuals. Further, even when such acts are condemnable in the eyes of some people, they are not bad from a different point of view. This principle is palpable all through the novel. It gradually becomes clear that Kalindi, who gave up the right path of conduct and began to live with a man from other caste without getting married to him, is not devoid of values or possesses a bad character. Similarly, Shivasharanappa, who is blamed for her moral degradation and for her poverty, is also a victim of the circumstances. He loves Kalindi till the end, but distances himself from her for her own good. He has not even wronged his wife by getting associated with another woman, for his wedded wife is not a real woman. Similarly, Benjamin, who tries to befriend Kalindi's sister Usha, initially appears to be a loafer, but is faced with the genuine problem of how to approach the girl he likes in a decent manner. All the characters in the novel reach the stage of a revolutionary social thought through different paths. The writer achieves this by displaying the various aspects of the different social grounds on which the issues of marriage of the youth are based. The success of the novel lies in the writer's ability to convince the readers about the necessity of this social revolution and its inevitability for world progress. I hope you will read this novel. We have looked at 700 years of literary history in the past 6 months through Granthyatra. From the Leelas in the book Leela Charitra to autobiographies such as Maji Janmathe and novels such as Pan Lakshat Kon Gheto, Ashram Harini and Brahmankanya, we enjoyed the prose literature in Marathi. From the OVs of Jnaneshwar to Abhangas of Namdev, Zanabai and Tukaram, Dasbodh by Ramdas, poetry of the Pandit poets and the verses of modern poets such as Keshav Sut, Balkavi, Tambe and Acharya Atre, we savoured a wide range of poetry, and we got acquainted with plays such as Saubhadra, Sangeet Sharada and Ekas Pyala. The first season of Granthyatra ends here. We will now take a break for 2 weeks. The journey ahead is equally interesting. I am sure you will accompany me again when the journey resumes. We shall meet again to listen to the first breath of modern short story. Until then, keep reading.